For all you sinners burning in hell, here's part 2 of addressing the 7 deadly sins. Today, we're going to be talking about greed. I believe that's right, yeah? Let me look, because I didn't actually pay... Yeah, greed. Greed comes after pride, at least in the list I'm reading them off in, so... That way it's easy for me to remember. So, greed is one of those ones that really fucking gets to me. And not in a way that a lot of you are going to anticipate, if I get any new viewers off the back of this. If you know me, you probably already do anticipate this. But the thing with greed is the people who scream the most about greed are actually secretly the greediest people. And I'm going to explain that, and there's going to be another video that's going to go a lot more in depth into this idea that I'm addressing right now. But for now, I'm going to skim the top and just focus on greed in general. So, if we're just going off of the religious idea of greed, what is greed? Because it's never actually defined at what point you become greedy. So, at what point do you accrue enough money to where beyond that you are classified as greedy? How wealthy do you have to be? So, take for instance the church, or some churches say you should donate at least 10% of your wealth or your earnings or whatever. Which, by the way, is a very sizable chunk to be demanding from someone who doesn't actually offer anything to you. Keep in mind, churches don't provide anything for you aside from, like, yeah, if you go to church, it's good that you donate. I'm not, let me put that out there. I'm not saying you're stupid for donating to church. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying there are certain churches that say, well, you should, otherwise you're robbing God or whatever the fuck it is. There's an actual clip of a pastor saying that, and it's like, well, no, not necessarily, because you're not actually providing anything for me, and the people who, and usually the churches who are demanding money don't provide anything to the public either. A good church does charity work and stuff like that, but you do have those shitty pastors or priests or whatever the fuck they are out there who just kind of steal the money, and then, you know, they end up having a private fucking jet. And if that's not fucked up, I don't know what is. How are you going to take your, not disciples, your congregation's money and spend it on a private jet and allege that it's in the name of God? No, you're a fucking fraud. So keep in mind, holy men are not necessarily exempt from being greedy. So by the way, there's no actual evidence to prove that Jesus decided that you shouldn't be wealthy. And I hate this notion that a wealthy man is a sinful one, because there's plenty of wealthy men. More wealthy men are perfectly good people than not, you know, if that makes any sense. I mean, like, the majority of them are perfectly fine and they don't really do anything wrong. But on the flip side, you have poor people who say, oh, well, you should be donating more money because you earn more. And like I said, I'm going to get a lot more into that in a different video entirely, but not this one. But they say, well, you know, those rich people should be donating more and doing more charity work, and I don't see why I can't have why do they need all that money? They don't need all that. Give it to some of us. Well, that's greedy, because that's money you didn't earn. Technically, that rich person earned all that money. If anything, you're the one who's a bit greedy. And I say a bit as in, like, that's putting it lightly. You shouldn't be demanding money from people who don't owe you shit. But yeah, there obviously is a flip side. There are people who are actually greedy, although there's not necessarily as many as people like to think there are. You know, you'd be hard pressed to find someone who just doesn't have or doesn't give any money away at all. Which, by the way, these people are under no obligation to give their money away. If they earn that money, that's theirs to keep. They could do whatever they want with it. So demanding that someone gives out money or they're greedy is kind of a shitty thing to do. But what if you simply don't have the money to spare? Say you earn, you know, $20,000 a year and don't have money to be giving to, you know, Salvation Army. I'm only using that as an example because, you know, that's, you know, 'tis the season, and that seems to be the most common one around this time of year. But it's like, if you say you don't have money to give to charity, but yet you're still considered greedy for not, like, well, would you still be considered greedy even if you're broke? No. If so, I guess the way people measure it is, do you have money to be giving away? Yes or no. And if yes, then they're like, oh, well, are you giving it away? And if you say no, then they're like, well, why not? But, and even if you are, some people will say, oh, well, you're not donating enough. It's like, it's still not your money. And so I think the idea of greed is one of these ideas that's loosely based on nothing particularly concrete, because it's really hard to quantify greed. It's a lot easier to quantify something like pride or lust or something like that, but it's a lot harder to quantify greed, because you have to think, what is their economic standpoint or their situation, and then also take into account, well, that is technically their money. They're not coveting anything that's not theirs, or they're not hurting anybody else necessarily. The very few instances where greed actually affects other people is if, say, you're a business owner or CEO or something, and you want more money to put in your coffers, so you're cutting wages for your employees. Or, like, take for instance companies that go bankrupt, they have to, like, I think Sears just had this, where all the high-ranking chairmen and stuff like that didn't basically, they fucked over all their employees and stuff just so they could give themselves a couple $1 million a piece. Obviously at a certain point, that is obviously greedy. I don't think anybody's really debating that. It's kind of fucked up. But I feel like so long as you're not hurting anybody else, you're under no obligation to give money to anything, and I don't think people should necessarily be able to run around and call you greedy. Like, you're not under, would it be nice if everybody donated to charity and helped out? Yeah, but there's also people in charities who are greedy, who steal money from the charity. So what are you going to do about that? Anyways, I don't have a whole lot to say on this matter. I feel like I've just repeated myself over and over. So that's pretty much it for this one. See ya.